Hello everyone. For tonight's project, which is going to be a neurographic tree, all you're going to need is a Sharpie and some kind of colors. You could use markers, you could use colored pencils, you could use watercolors. Any of these will result in a beautiful piece of art. And then if you want to add a little teeny tiny bit of collage at the end, you absolutely can do that, but it's not even a requirement. So that's it. Here we go.
So in keeping with the idea of springtime and starting fresh, like I wanted to do a tree. And before I start mine, I really want you to know that there's no right or wrong for this. Everyone's tree is going to look different, just like in every one of my classes. It's never going to look exactly the same. And to trust the process, this is going to work out. It is going to work out. So the main thing with a neurographic piece of art that makes it successful is if you start on one part of the page and then just continuous line. Don't overthink it, not any flippity dippities, just like, little swirls or whatever that will be sort of bisecting each other. So for example, I'm going to try and do it dark, like a little bit darker than you should, but I want you to be able to see this. So for example, I hope you can see this. I'm just going to come down here with this just swirly line here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm trying to create a tree. If I use this one or this one for reference, thank you. That I'm just trying to create the trunk a little bit and some branches. So you can have as many branches as you want, but that's why I'm sort of sometimes starting from the top or starting from the bottom. So since I came down, now I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to create another line that's going off in a different direction. So for me, I found that I kind of like to start these at the bottom where the trunk would be, but there's no right or wrong. So sometimes I start up at the top and sometimes I come down. But the important thing is that we do want the lines to kind of bisect a little bit and cross a little. And so I don't know, I'll probably think like 5 lines for my trunk. So let's see what I can do here. Maybe I do a sort of one that way. So I'm just kind of establishing my trunk a little bit here. And I have all kinds of marks on this paper. And then maybe one more that's like a little thicker. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll just come from here and just like let it happen like that. That's probably okay-ish. I don't know, maybe a couple more. Maybe I do one here. Okay. That's probably good for my tree part. So it's nothing fancy. I just sort of created a few lines. So this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines, which works perfectly for me because, I like my odd numbers. And I think also for this one, I might create some ground, like almost like a root system here. So I'm just creating a little bit of a line there for myself where the earth would be, but you don't have to do that. Then the next thing you're going to want is like an assortment of different size circles. So I have this tape and the outside of the tape is obviously different than the inside of the tape. I also have like this thing to trace. It's a little smaller. Then I even have a thing of tape here, which is even smaller. So I could do the outside of the tape or the inside of the tape. So I have like a few different sizes that I can work with. And really all I'm doing here is I'm going to set this thing. There's no right or wrong here. I'm going to take my biggest circle and I'm kind of putting it, honestly, you can put it anywhere, but I want it to be like my biggest circle. So I want it to cross multiple lines here. So hopefully you can see that. Maybe I can make that a little bigger so you can see. Yeah, that's maybe a little bigger. So you can see that line there.
Here you can see I'm using time lapse just to add my circles. It's a very personal process. There's no right or wrong way, but you want to have like at least 5 or 7 or, circles. It just, everybody's different. The more circles you have, the more line work that you'll be doing at the end. I've done this project many times and with many different supplies. For tonight, I thought I was going to just use my watercolors, but then I actually ended up feeling like I wanted to scribble a little bit, so I got my colored pencils, but you really can use anything for this, so just trust whatever it is that you feel like a pull to do tonight, because you can always redo it later with a different medium.
We're not going to worry about these pencil lines right now. The first step is going to be that we're going to want to color in our, let's go with like our trunk. And the trick to this project, and I've done it enough times to know that this is really true, is you want to make each one of your little sections, you want to make sure that they are colored in fully and like all the way over to your line. And I use a pretty good amount of pressure, but then I'll also go over this with, I'm going to go over this with watercolor at the end, I think. So I don't know, we'll see. But each one of these little areas, we're going to color in.
Okay, I'm using time lapse here to just do a little bit of explanation. So once you've figured out one color that you want to use on your trunk, you want to repeat that color in a few places and before changing to another color. So I always try to do at least 3 times with a similar color, and then I take a slightly darker color or a slightly lighter color. The colors do not have to be realistic. You don't have to go with browns, but that is just what I chose to do this time. And as you can see, I'm adding like 3 or 4 or 5 of the same color before I move to another one. And the only tip is keep them spread apart so that 2 of the same color are not touching. I finished coloring in my trunk, then I begin to turn my attention to what will eventually be like the leaves, sort of, or the abstract envisioning of the leaves. And so it's the time of the year right now when I look outside, I can see a whole bunch of cherry blossom trees blooming, and they are pink and purple and green. So I'm grabbing a whole bunch of greens here, and eventually I'll be introducing some pinks and purples. As you can see, I have a whole bunch of greens here, and I'm using the same principle. I'm continuing to fill in those lines, each little area with a different color, repeating them 3 to 5 times each, whatever feels right to you as you go.
Okay. So now I'm going to switch gears. I guess I'm going to introduce some different pinks now. So I'm going to grab the same kind of thing. I have a bunch of different pinks. So I'm going to grab all these different pinky choices that I have here. I have fluorescence. I have so many different pinks. Okay, cool. So I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I'm going to introduce some pinks into this because it's just an abstract idea of a cherry tree. So again, if you were thinking like a lilac tree, just would maybe want some purple in there. Or if you're thinking about a specific type of tree or bush that you love with certain colors, but it doesn't have to be so, literal, I guess I would say.
Okay, it's time to grab those acrylic paint pens or Sharpies. All you're going to do now is trace over your lines, those original pencil marks that you made either with a Posca or a Sharpie, and just take it really slow. Remember to breathe and enjoy the process. Once you have all your lines traced, this is the part of the process where the magic happens. So you'll notice that in the painting, there are some areas where when two lines cross, you get a little bit of an X. And all we want to do is we want to round these areas so that it almost gives the appearance of like a piece of stained glass. It's like the place where the solder would touch, and you're just rounding them. And when you do this in every single area, the effect is actually quite magical. I actually switched to a slightly smaller tip just so I could really clean things up a little bit. So don't be afraid to change your markers to get the achieved effect that you're trying to get. Have everything the way you want it to look, then I asked everyone to really think about, maybe like look at your piece, your tree, and think about placing yourself in this picture somewhere. Like if you had to picture where you are in this image, where are you? Are you up in the blossoms? Are you down in the trunk? And then create a little something on paper and think about collaging it down. So you can see I made like a little flower, and I thought about where I am, and I was like, you know what? This is the spot. I felt it a little bit off center, top left, and like a little blossom. And that is where it worked for me. If you choose to do some outlining, you can do that, or you don't have to. I think it makes a nice effect. You could also choose to color in the white part of your painting. And when it comes to that, I do have one recommendation. That is, just try to use a color that is not already in your painting somewhere else. So for example, I don't have any blue, so if I was going to put in a background, I might choose to use blue or yellow. But after looking at this for a little while, I decided I kind of like the stark white background a little bit. And so I just decided to forego it for now. I can always do another one with a different color background. I decided that I wanted to sign this piece on the bottom left because I also realized that I wanted to add some words. I've been listening to a book called All the Way to the River by Elizabeth Gilbert, and she had a quote in there that I really liked, and so I wanted to integrate it into this piece, and so I knew that I was going to need to use that block on the right to really get it in there properly. And in keeping with the idea that it's always good to practice self-care with positive messaging, I liked this quote that said, "We cannot access tomorrow's wisdom today." And that's just a reminder to remain patient. We only know what we know at this moment, and that's the same for other people. We're all on our own journey at our own pace. And then just to kind of pop my colors a little bit more and add a little bit more texture, I actually grabbed my watercolors and I went over this piece with another set of really bright watercolors. They're my Jane Davenport colors, and so it really popped up the purples and it also really popped up the pinks. That is not an essential step, it's just something that I wanted to do to play. It's always a fun experience to remove the blue painter's tape and reveal the crisp white border, so that's what I'm doing here.
So there's my cute little piece, and like I said, I might go in and like round some things a little bit, right? Like my little edges. So these are just little options that people can have, because there's another couple lines that are crossing.